I wasn't supposed to be there. But I was. It started like any other evening, quiet, still, and full of the kind of tension you only feel when you're trying not to think too much. I remember the sky outside had just started to turn a deep orange, that strange, in-between hour when it's not day but not quite night either. I had just wrapped up a shoot, still half in costume, makeup fading. My phone buzzed once, then went silent. It was Can. A name I hadn't seen on my screen in weeks. I didn't open the message. I don't know why. Maybe because I was afraid. Maybe because I already knew what it was going to say. Or maybe because I hoped for something more, something he'd never give me in words. Not directly. I don't remember exactly what made me go to that place. His place. I hadn't been there in what felt like forever, but my hands moved on their own. Keys, jacket, door. Just like that, I was outside, walking into the unknown. I told myself I wasn't going to go in. That I'd just pass by. Just to see the lights. Just to make sure he was okay. But then I saw her. And suddenly, it all came rushing back. She was laughing. That's the first thing I noticed. Not just any laugh. The kind of laugh you don't fake. The kind you let out when you're completely at ease, when you're safe, when you're happy. That kind. I froze. My feet stopped a few meters away from the door, but my heart was already inside. Listening. Watching. Trying to make sense of what was happening. There was music playing in the background, something soft, almost romantic. And through the open window, I heard his voice. Calm. Steady. Familiar. He said her name. I wasn't supposed to hear that. But I did. And it changed everything. I stood there, motionless. I wasn't sure if I wanted to run or scream. But I didn't either. I just listened. He was telling her a story. A memory. Something about us. I remember the way she used to look at me when I walked into the room, he said. Like I was the only one that mattered. Her voice followed, curious. Do you miss her? There was a pause. A long one. And then came the sentence I'll never forget. Sometimes, but not in the way you think. It felt like something shattered inside me. Not because he didn't miss me. But because he had defined it, limited it, into something less than I had hoped for. Something smaller than what I still carried in my chest every single day. That sentence, those 7 words, erased months of trying to stay strong. I leaned against the cold wall of the building, just to stay upright. I thought I had prepared myself for this moment. For the possibility that he might move on. That he might find someone else. But hearing it, like that, feeling it in his voice, it broke something I didn't know could still break. I wanted to leave, but my legs wouldn't move. I wanted to scream, but silence wrapped itself around my throat. I had become a ghost of my own story. Invisible. Forgotten. Uninvited. I wasn't supposed to hear that, but I did. And now, I couldn't unhear it. I turned and walked away, slowly. Every step felt heavier than the last. And even though he didn't see me, even though he'll probably never know I was there that night, everything between us changed. And the worst part? He didn't even know. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I just sat there on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing. My jacket still on. My hands still shaking. My heart, louder than ever. His voice wouldn't leave my head. Sometimes, but not in the way you think. What did he mean? Did he mean he had moved on? Did he mean I was just a memory? I went back to the beginning. To the first time we met. To the first smile he gave me when we weren't even supposed to talk off camera. To the time he looked at me, really looked, like he already knew we'd never be the same after that day. And maybe we weren't. I remember one night, long before anyone knew what was going on between us. We were sitting outside after a late shoot. Just the two of us. The sky was black, filled with stars we never really looked at. We were too busy looking at each other. He turned to me and whispered, "We shouldn't fall in love." And I whispered back, "But what if we already have?" There was a silence. That kind of silence you only get with someone who feels like home. He didn't answer. He just touched my hand. And that was enough. So how did we go from that to this? How does something that once felt so pure, so real, end up turning into silence and missed calls? I wish I had the answer. Maybe it started with distance. Maybe it was the pressure, the cameras, the rumors. Or maybe we were just two people pretending we weren't already broken before we found each other. But tonight, hearing him say those words, hearing her laugh where I used to, that's when I realized. He wasn't mine anymore. And I know what you might be thinking. Why didn't I call him? Why didn't I confront him? Ask what he really meant. Because deep down, I already knew the truth. That night wasn't about him talking to someone else. It was about me realizing I had held on for too long. I had been waiting. For a call. For a message. For a sign. But it never came. Not because he forgot me. But because he chose not to remember. And that's what hurt the most. Not the other woman. Not his words. But the quiet choice to leave me behind without ever saying goodbye. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't losing someone, it's realizing they let you go long before you noticed. That night, after I heard his voice, something inside me cracked, not all at once, but slowly, in pieces. Like glass breaking under pressure. I started going back to every moment I thought meant something. The late-night messages. The way he used to say my name, soft, almost like a secret. The times he'd show up without warning, just to make me smile. But then I remembered the shift. How those messages got shorter. How the silences between us grew longer. How I stopped asking questions because I was scared of the answers. There was one night I'll never forget. He had come over after a long day. We didn't say much. He just lay on the couch, head in my lap, eyes closed. I thought he was resting. But then he whispered, barely audible, "Do you think we're good for each other?" I didn't know how to respond. So I said the one thing I thought would keep us together. "I think we're real." He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just got up, kissed my forehead, and left early. That was the first time I felt it, the distance. The kind that has nothing to do with geography. Looking back now, I think we both knew it was slipping away. We were holding on to a memory, not a reality. We kept performing the same scenes in a love story we were no longer writing. But I was stubborn. I thought love could fix everything. I thought if I stayed quiet, if I stayed loyal, if I stayed there, he'd find his way back. Instead, he drifted further. The hardest part of loving someone like him. Is that the version of him you fell in love with? It doesn't always stay. Ken was fire. He lit up every room, every conversation, every inch of my heart. But fire doesn't stay still. And when it moves on, it doesn't look back at what it burned. After that night, the night I heard what I wasn't supposed to hear, I didn't cry. Not right away. I sat in silence for hours. Trying to decide if what I heard was worse than what I already feared. And the truth? It wasn't. Because deep down, I had already lost him. I just hadn't admitted it yet. But now, there was no more pretending. Not after hearing him speak of me like a chapter already closed. Not after realizing someone else was already writing his new story. Sometimes, closure doesn't come with answers. It comes with acceptance. The days after that night were quiet. Strangely quiet. No phone calls. No messages. No sudden knocks on the door. Just silence. But this time, it wasn't haunting. It was necessary. I stopped checking his social media. I stopped asking mutual friends how he was. I stopped replaying old voice notes I should have deleted months ago. And one night, as I sat alone in my apartment, the same place where we had once laughed, danced, argued, and kissed, I did something I never thought I could. I let him go. Not out of anger. Not out of pain. But out of peace. You see, love doesn't always end in flames or betrayal. Sometimes, it ends in a whisper. In a sentence you weren't supposed to hear. In a truth you didn't want to face. In a moment when someone stopped choosing you, quietly, without warning. And that's what happened with Can. He stopped choosing me. And I stayed for a while. Holding on. Hoping. Imagining what might still be possible. But that night. The night I stood outside his window, the night I heard her laugh, the night I heard him, it gave me the truth I had been too afraid to ask for. He had moved on. And now, so would I. Not because I stopped loving him. But because I finally started loving myself enough to walk away. They say some stories aren't meant to last forever. They're just meant to change you. And he did. He changed me. He showed me what it feels like to be truly seen, and what it feels like to be slowly forgotten. He taught me that not all I love yous are promises. Some are just moments. Beautiful, brief, unforgettable moments. If I could talk to him one last time, not to fix anything, but just to be honest, I think I'd say, thank you. For loving me the way you knew how. For breaking me in ways that made me grow. For leaving, because it forced me to finally find myself. And maybe, just maybe, he'd look at me with that same fire in his eyes. Say nothing. But mean everything. Just like he always did. I wasn't supposed to hear that, but I did. And everything changed. Not just him. Not just us. Me.